There we go. Boy, what trouble I have had just getting this thing up and going. Let's get this over here so I can see myself. Right there. Pull that down. And that over. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 7 of Love on Movies. Today's April 2nd of 2025. And boy, you would not believe the trouble I have had for a while getting this episode up and running. And I've had a bunch of issues this morning getting this up and running. If you want to hear more about that, you can follow me on social media on Facebook and Instagram. It's the same handle at Van City McDowell. And then, of course, here on YouTube's Love on Movies, please subscribe so you can get other videos. One of the uh, reasons I enjoy doing the show is an education. And boy, I've learned a lot in the past few weeks when I've been trying to get this episode up, and I've had tons of issues, but I don't want to waste a whole lot of time talking about that. So follow me on the other socials and we'll talk about that over there where I can just be more. So today we're loving on Joe Somebody, and this is a story of an ordinary man forced into violence by a workplace bully. Another way to look at it, this is a story of a single dad looking to restore his dignity. This is a love story, a story about a father's love, a story about love lost, and a story about finding love again. Now, where to watch this, according to Rotten Tomatoes, I watched it on Amazon Prime Video for free back in February. I intended to do the show much sooner than I did, but again, I've had a lot of issues, some technology like I've had this morning. I've had some sickness in the house. I'm still sick as we speak, but I'm nowhere near as sick as I was a week ago. My wife and daughter are and have been sick, although I think my daughter is in the best condition of all of us right now. But I watched this movie on Amazon Prime Video. They have since taken it off of the free version, and now the last I looked, it's $12.99, and I've got it pulled up on Fandango at home. It's also $12.99 there. So I don't know where you can watch this movie for free. I did watch this movie for free. Being a Prime member, you get some movies and TV shows and stuff as part of being an Amazon Prime member. I watched it when this was a video that was a perk. Now you have to pay for it. Nonetheless, this movie was directed by John Pasquin. This is the second time that he's popped up on Love on Movies. The first time was the 1994 film, also starring Tim Allen, The Santa Claus. So I'm going to love on him today. I did not do it in the other episodes. So this is a much smaller cast. It's one reason I chose this movie. I know this movie is not going to bring a whole lot of eyeballs, but I found it a challenge to love on Tim Allen, because what more was I going to say about him? How was that going to look? An actor like Tim Allen. I've done 7 episodes of Love on Movies. He's been in 4 of them because I did the Santa Claus trilogy and now this one. So I just wanted that challenge personally. And then it also stars Julie Bowen. I wanted to get her on the show to love on, not her. I mean, she's not going to come on a guest. It's not that kind of show. Nonetheless, I wanted to love on her for a little bit of a soft opening for Happy Gilmore, because Happy Gilmore 2 is coming out later in the summer, back in July 25th, I believe. So I just wanted to love on her a little bit. Also, it's got Kelly Lynch in this movie. Greg Germann was really the reason I decided I was going to love on Joe Somebody, because he plays Larry Dennett, one of the owners of Ricky Bobby's car in Ricky Bobby, the Ballad of Talladega Nights. And when you start looking at that cast list, I'm not getting down to Greg Germann. I mean, you got Will Ferrell, you got John C. Reilly, Michael Clark Duncan, Jane Lynch. I mean, where's Greg Germann going to pop up? And so I'm going to get a chance to marinate on him today. It's also got Hayden Panettiere. I'm sure I butchered that. Hayden Panettiere. Hayden Panettiere, if that's how you say it. She played the daughter, Patrick Warburton, and Jim Belushi. This film was released December 21st of 2001. It had a budget of $38 million. I mentioned it pretty much every show. Take the budget, double it for marketing, and that's kind of the baseline. If this movie's going to be a success or a flop, that's the break-even point. So 38 times 2 would be 76 million, and this movie made 24.5 million. So this was a box office flop. I enjoyed it. I'll get to the reviews in a little bit. The Rotten Tomatoes has it from the critics at 21%. So it's Rotten Tomatoes. The audience score is 28%. So that would be spilt popcorn. I would still rate it spilt popcorn because I'm just a fan, but I would have it at a higher percentage. So the cutoff for Rotten Tomatoes is 60%. I wouldn't say it's so bad I'm going to throw it out. I would say it's probably in the low to mid 50s to where it's stale popcorn, still spilled, but stale. I'd eat it because I think it's a good movie. My biggest issue, and I'll get to it at some point, is the way it's marketed. It's marketed as a comedy. I don't think it's all that funny. I think it's a drama that's got some comedic elements through that lens. I enjoyed this movie, but the way it's presented, that's why I was going to rate it fresh. And then as I got to watching the trailer and stuff, and they were presenting it as a comedy, I was like, I can't rate it fresh because I'm not going to recommend this movie as a comedy. I would recommend it as a drama with comedic elements. And I love those style of movies. This is not one of the better ones, but it is a good one in that regard. I also want to note this movie was a box office flop. However, the movies that was in the theater at the time of this film's release, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Rings, and Ocean's 11. All three of those movies kicked off franchises. Ocean's 11, there's 4 movies. There's, 5, because there was the original one from the 70s or whatever year that was. I'm not going to look it up, but with the Rat Pack. Harry Potter, that's a big franchise. Lord of the Rings, that's also turned into a big franchise. The plot per IMDb, when Joe is beat up by a coworker in front of his daughter on Bring Your Child to Work Day, he decides to fight back. Storyline per IMDb, this was written by a guy named Nick Riganus. Nick Riganus, Riganas. So this is, I give him that credit because he did it. Humiliated before the eyes of his young daughter at the company's parking lot, timid single father Joe painfully realizes that he is no match for his coworker and office bully Mark. However, as bruised Joe rapidly sinks into depression, much to everyone's surprise, he decides to get even. Now it's up to former B-movie star and martial arts instructor Chuck to help Joe get in shape and perhaps save what's left of his crushed male ego. Before long, the rumors of a rematch start spreading like wildfire, and suddenly a new Mr. Popularity emerges. But is Joe up to the task? Above all, will his colleagues root for the underdog? Now, just a quick spoiler, they ended up not fighting, and it's good for Joe because the character played by Patrick Warburton, Mark McKinney, would have wiped the floor with him. It's because size matters. 2 weeks of, or whatever it was, of martial arts training, it's not going to make up that size difference. He would have got stomped. However, I was invested in the story because so much of that there, anybody that works, and I've got a corporate job, but I'm a trucker. I work for a corporation. You know, I'm not a white collar person like he was working for a pharmaceutical company. I'm a trucker in the food industry, and you know, there's a lot of corporate stuff there, crap, if you will, corporate crap. And but you're supposed to be there for 10 years to get in that parking spot. And Mark McKinney was only there for 7. And that would anger anybody. But Mark McKinney was also a lot bigger than Joe Sheffer. So yeah, I'm invested. What would Anthony McDowell do? I'm 5'11", 260-ish, but there's still a lot of people bigger than me. And what would I do if somebody just decided they were going to pop me in front of my kid? I don't know. I was invested into it. Here's the plot per IMDb. Joe Sheffer is a recently divorced single parent and a talented audiovisual specialist at Stark Pharmaceuticals. One day, Joe pulls into the parking lot at work, accompanied by his young daughter Natalie, to find his coworker Mark McKinney parking in a spot that has been reserved for those who have worked for the company for 10 years. However, McKinney has only worked there for 7 years. When McKinney is confronted by Joe about this, he assaults Joe in front of Natalie. Now, I love the relationship between Natalie and Joe. I have a young daughter, and one of the issues I had with Joe was when Natalie, the daughter, wanted to see him, he wouldn't even want to see her. Now, for me, when I have a bad day, my daughter brings me joy. But I've also never been beat up in front of her. So how would I react? I was kind of interested. I was invested in that. And then again, as I mentioned, McKinney didn't earn that parking spot. And anybody that has been with a company, when you earn something and someone else just decides that they're entitled to it, yeah, it kind of ticks you off. It did Joe. It would me. How would I handle it? I don't know. Joe falls into a state of self-pity until Meg Harper, the wellness coordinator at Stark, accidentally ignites a fuse in him in a fit of frustration when she asks Joe, "What do you want?" And I like this too because we've all kind of been there where we get this little bit of inspiration that makes us want to go down a rabbit hole. What do you want? Joe is suddenly stirred to action by this question and decides he wants a rematch to reclaim his dignity and self-respect, which he felt McKinney took from him. After issuing the challenge to McKinney, who has been temporarily suspended, so that's a little bit of real world. In the real world, he would have gotten in trouble for doing that. So he has been suspended. Joe begins to find himself becoming very popular around the office for his bravery. Meg and Natalie, however, do not feel fighting McKinney will solve anything, and both attempt to tell Joe as much to no avail. Joe seeks out the aid of an ex-being movie star turned martial arts instructor named Chuck Scarrett to teach him to defend himself. Things seem to finally be going right for Joe as he begun to see Meg and has even been given a promotion at work he had been hoping for. So again, I'm all in with this part of the story because I got looked over a promotion at work just a couple of years ago, and I'm still ticked off about it. In fact, the guy that got the job ain't at the company no more. I'm still at the company. I'd still be there. And then of course the economy sucks, and so they're not replacing that position right now. So now I have to wait. So yeah, I'm in. I like this story. When Meg realizes Jeremy, a colleague she works closely with for the company, who also happens to be attracted to her, only gave Joe a non existing position at the office to prevent him from suing the company, she resigns in fear that she might one day have to demote or even fire Joe. Meg again tries to persuade Joe not to fight McKinney and finally gives him an ultimatum. If he does not call off the fight with McKinney, their relationship is over. The day of the fight, Joe makes his way to the school where the brawl is to take place. However, he ultimately realizes he doesn't need to fight to prove his self-worth to himself or anybody else, and it is not worth the price he would have to pay. When Joe tells McKinney and his other coworkers the fight is off, McKinney offers him an apology, which Joe accepts. Joe then goes and reconciles with Meg. Now, it was still good. No, that's the end of that. It's still good that Joe went and took the martial arts, though, even though he ended up not fighting McKinney, and not even necessarily the confidence he got, which is a positive. If in the real world, Mark Zuckerberg talked about this on the Joe Rogan Experience, where it has changed his approach. Mixed martial arts has changed Zuckerberg, if I can talk, Zuckerberg's approach to how he handles things in the corporate setting, because who cares about this, like, oh, this is going to happen or this is going to happen in some meeting when you've been training for 2 or 3 hours and getting grappled and punched and all that kind of stuff. So it's good for him that it helped his confidence. Zuckerberg was on Rogan before I watched this movie. I'd never seen this movie, but the one time, and I thought about that as I was watching. I said, "No, this kind of relates to Zuckerberg's story that he had on Rogan." Now, I didn't. That is the end of the plot on IMDb. I was not crazy about that. That was really the first issue that I had with the film. Was I was not crazy about how they summed it up, because one of the other things that I haven't mentioned yet that I enjoyed about this movie was the love triangles, and there was two of them. So the first one, not even mentioned in the plot, was this girl named Abby. Now, who's Abby? Abby. I don't want to. They keep giving me pop-ups when I'm trying to look over here. Abby Manheim, Manheim, played by Christy Conaway. On IMDb, just listed as one of Joe's coworkers at Stark Pharmaceuticals. But to me, she was so much more than that, because once Joe challenged Mark, Abby was all over Joe the whole movie. And I thought that they were setting up, and it's very cliche in these rom-com type of movies, where they were setting up a love triangle. And I'll get to it right here. Let me, I've written a whole thing about Abby and Joe, and what I what I thought was going to happen, then what actually happened. So Abby notices Joe, flirts with him hard, but Joe never reciprocates. And I thought that was interesting. I thought they were setting up a misunderstanding, and it never, as the movie played out, I didn't know Abby's name was Abby. That's another thing. I never knew her name. She didn't speak much, but maybe not hardly at all. But once Joe came back to work after telling Mark McKinney that he wanted to fight, she flirted with Joe the rest of the movie, and I thought that would come into play at some point throughout the movie, but it never did. I thought the climax of her flirting would pay off at the Minnesota Timberwolves basketball game when the kiss cam aired on TV, and that creates another point of conflict since Joe told Meg already that he wasn't ready to commit to anyone. I thought that scenario was brewing, that tension, that conflict, but nope. She wasn't watching the Timberwolves game at all. Instead, she was playing basketball in a small gym. It looked like a community center type of gym as part of a big brother, big sister type of program. Meanwhile, at the Timberwolves game, when Abby went to kiss Joe, he turned his head, got up and left, and went to Meg. Now, remember, I'm doing this off of memory. So since I can't rewatch the movie without paying for it, forgive me if I jumble up something within that storyline. They don't talk about it on IMDb. I mean, on Wikipedia nor IMDb. That's why that was the first obstacle of me putting out this episode. But that was a storyline that I enjoyed very much. Was Joe really that broken? Was he just oblivious to Abby's interest? I've certainly been there, where a girl has shown some interest in me, and I completely missed the boat. A quick personal story: my freshman year of high school, at the end of the year, a girl that I sat next to in French class, we had chatted off and on throughout the semester, and she really warmed up to me by the end of the semester, gives me her number and says, "You better use this." And idiot me says, "Thank you," smiling like a doofus. And I think to myself, oh, how friendly. Obviously, looking back on it, maybe Joe Sheffer was having an Anthony McDowell moment. Not 100% sure, but the fact that this storyline just flat out had no payoff whatsoever, I actually enjoyed that and felt it incredibly relatable. The other one, they did kind of toy with, and again, nothing came of it, was Jeremy. Now, Jeremy was played by Greg Germann. He was an executive at Stark Pharmaceuticals who is also romantically interested in Meg. Jeremy lusts for Meg, then Meg shuts him down swiftly and definitively. Then Jeremy insults Meg and her position with the Stark Pharmaceuticals. And then Meg, realizing that she's an underappreciated propaganda employee, quits her job, leaves Stark, and doesn't call to tell Joe. Joe then goes to fight Mark, decides against it, and Jeremy tells Joe that Jeremy himself had a prior relationship with Meg, but Joe doesn't believe him because he correctly assumes that he is just trying to provoke him. And that's when Joe goes to find Meg, pulling into her new job. And to help bring the story a little full circle, Joe parks in her assigned parking spot. And I thought that was kind of a nice little touch to close out the movie. So awards. This movie did not really win a whole lot of awards. In fact, it didn't win any. One nomination listed on IMDb, and that was 2002 nominee for the Young Artist Award for the best performance in a feature film for the leading young actress, Hayden Panettiere. Now, again, I'm probably not saying that name right, but you know what I'm talking about. The little girl has grown up. I'm going to love her in a minute, and she has turned into a phenom of an actress, and I'm kind of looking forward to seeing her in other stuff. Reviews. So I'm going to use my TV. Another problem I had was I've been using Rotten Tomatoes, and when I clicked on more to give me more reviews, when I tried to do this in the past, YouTube Studios kicked me out. And so I'm going to continue to use Rotten Tomatoes. I'll continue to put them in the show notes, but I'm also going to go back to using my TV because I don't want to do that again. I mentioned it before. Tomato meter from the critics, 21%. Audience score, 28%. I would rate it higher. The user rating is 4.1% from the community, 4.1 stars, 4 out of 5 stars, 4.1 stars. The user rating, it seems like everything's rated high when it comes to the community on Fandango at Home. And I don't know how many people that use that and voted and stuff. I wouldn't have it a 4. I wouldn't have it that high. I'd put it somewhere kind of in the middle, about 3, 3.5, 2.5, somewhere in that range. Well, probably I guess closer to 2.5. And I would have my audience score with the popcorn meter. I would have it higher because they're at 28%. I would be somewhere in the 50s, less than 60s. So it would be spilled popcorn. But it's still edible. It's just kind of like stale popcorn. So let's read some reviews. Here's from Common Sense Media. Talented actors are wasted on a bad script. I agree with that. Richard Roper from Ebert and Roper. I'd rather see a whole movie about an aging B-moving actor and forget all the stuff with Tim Allen. That's not a good take. Roger Ebert from the other one. He's from, but he's credited here from the Chicago Sun-Times. By the end of Joe Somebody, we are faced with a dismal prospect of being denied a climax, which, if it occurred, would be just as predictable as its substitute. All of these have rated it rotten. Here is New York Times. Joe Somebody continually squanders its opportunities for hilarity. That's something as a drama that's got comedic elements. I think it's fantastic. I would rate it fresh if that was how it was being advertised. But it's advertised as a comedy, and as a comedy, it's rotten to me. Newsday, a formula comedy as affable, I don't know what that means, and ineffectual as its hero. I got a limited vocabulary. They got to use real words that I know. Washington Post, this is still rotten. A surprisingly wistful, troubled film. It's not great. It's also not idiotic. Okay, I can agree with that. It is a troubled film. It is not great, and it's also not idiotic. I can't argue with that. Here's a fresh one from the Los Angeles Times. Joe Somebody sends audiences home happy, but also with an awareness that happy endings have to be earned in real life as on the screen. Yeah. Going back to Rotten, CNN.com. A made-for-TV movie dressed up like a feature film. Its plot is not only stale, it has been stale for decades. Boston Globe. It doesn't much succeed, but Allen and the bit of acid candor the script does muster do cushion its shortcomings. Last one, New York Post. The demands of formula eventually stifle anything that even looks like inspiration or honesty. To me, again, if it is a drama with comedic elements, I'm rating it fresh. If it's supposed to be a comedy, I'm rating it um, rotten, because I don't think it's not funny enough to be a comedy. This thing don't even come close to having anything memorable in it. Comedic elements where he's doing the kung fu in front of the mirror. The character doesn't know the camera's there watching. Who hasn't done stuff like that? Who hasn't? My wife caught me the other day talking to myself in front of the mirror. She's like, "Who you talking to?" I'm like, "Myself." "You're talking to yourself?" "Yes, I'm talking to myself. That's how I roll. It doesn't bother me one iota. Whether I'm caught or not, I don't care. I talk to myself. There's that one where I'll mention it at some point, but halfway through the movie, Tim Allen in real life started getting bruised up. So that's when he just randomly started wearing the pads, was because it really was hurting him. Then the photo with him here is the first photo when you get down to photos on IMDb, where he's sitting on the cooler and he's got the bag of ice on top of the cooler sitting on it. So again, there's some comedic elements. I just don't think it's a funny film. And the stuff with Jim Belushi, I'll mention it later, but he being an action guy, Jim Belushi, I know him best from According to Jim, but he's done a lot. In real life, he's done a lot of action movies, and he's worked with Arnold Schwarzenegger a lot, which I didn't know. I'll talk about that later. But that's why I got him the role. He could do the martial arts that was required for that role. And even though I couldn't find the movie for free to watch, there is a documentary. No, it's not. Let's call it a featurette that you would normally see on, like, maybe a bonus feature for Fandango at Home, or back in the DVD days where you got bonus features. There's a documentary or a featurette on YouTube about the fight sequences that they did. That was a fun watch. So be sure to go check that out. I'm going to go down to the music, and I don't remember if there's any music in here that I wanted to talk about or not, because I'm using my notes. I'm using the template for my notes from the Santa Claus 2, the Escape Clause, which was the last episode. And I wanted to talk about the music for that one. I don't know if I wanted to talk about the music on this one. I don't know if there's any songs. I'm looking on IMDb to find where the music was. I don't even see a section for the music. I'm sure it's here. I'm just overlooking it. Soundtrack. Here we go. So that's under Did You Know? I'm going to try to remember that. Part of my education here. Did you know? Soundtracks. Let's go see if there's any songs I want to talk about. Here's Whip It. If that's the song I'm thinking of, I know that one. Whip it. Whip it good. That's it. So, yeah, I just forgot to delete that. And there's a couple of jokes. Let's see if I can find some real quick under quotes, also on IMDb. Anything in particular? No. I mean, there's some deadpan stuff, like Meg says, "You're having a panic attack. Do you know what that means?" And Joe says, "It's pretty self-explanatory." There's a lot of that kind of stuff that is good. It works, but that's not like, when you think of a comedy movie, think of like Caddyshack or Bad Boys is a good type of movie. This would be like a Bad Boys type of movie. I would say it's a dramatic script, but it's got comedy in it. But even that's way funnier than this movie. So yeah, and there's just not enough comedy for me to call it a comedy. Let's love on Tim Allen. He's the lead actor that plays Joe Somebody. This is the 4th out of 7 episodes of Love on Movies where I've loved on Tim Allen. These are some notes from Wikipedia under the production section, where we learn a little bit more about him, and then I added some more stuff down in there. It's jumbled up. The role of Joe Schaefer was originally offered to Jim Carrey, but Carrey decided to join the 2001 film The Majestic instead, so the role of Joe Schaefer would eventually be taken by Allen. The film marked Allen and Pasquin's 3rd feature film together, after 1994's The Santa Claus and 1997's Jungle to Jungle. And again, I've loved on the Santa Claus already which was episode 5 of Love on Movies, as well as some TV episodes of Home Improvement, Last Man Standing, and Tim's current series, Shifting Gears. The entire film, Joe Somebody, was shot over nearly an 8-week span in the Twin Cities of Minnesota, which the Twin Cities are Minneapolis and St. Paul. I actually had never looked that up. I grew up watching baseball, and I knew the Minnesota Twins, and I've heard the Twin Cities kind of said casually, but I never actually looked it up. That's Minneapolis and St. Paul. That's the Twin Cities. The screenplay's balance of comedy and drama intrigued actor Tim Allen, who was searching for a project that was more than just broad comedy and felt Joe Somebody would allow him to exhibit his comedic and dramatic skills. This is something that many actors, including me, do. Sometimes you take roles because you see something in a project that you want to get on tape. And I did it for a short film called Monopoly Rags to Riches. You can find that on YouTube, because I wanted a Charlie Chaplin type of film on my resume. Now, they offered me the lead for that movie, but I didn't have the schedule for it. So I was a supporting actor in that movie, but it was a good movie. And they ended up casting a kid for well, he's a kid to me, but he was in his 20s as the lead role, and he was fantastic. Producer Brian Riley says, let's see, no. Of the script, get back to where, of the script, Tim Allen noted the story has a lot of heart to it and an emotion that I really love, end quote. Producer Brian Riley, who partners with Allen on his films, commented that Tim's previous roles did not have the kind of emotional truth or intimacy on screen called for Joe Somebody. Tim has reached a time in his life when it's right for him to do a film with rich and shaded characters, end quote. Again, all this, they're saying the right stuff here. It's when you look at the promotions that it's like, no, this ain't that. With Allen on board, the studio executives began to search for a director for the film. After reading the script and discussing the details with Allen, Riley, and numerous studios executives, John Pasquin agreed to direct. Halfway through shooting, Tim's arms became painfully bruised, which is why he began wearing the protective pads all of a sudden. Joe Somebody's another project where he plays the everyman, which fits his brand. That's something I'm studying as an actor is brand. So I put it in my notes to help me think about it. Tim Allen asked Fox Pictures to delay the release from December 2001 to after the first of the 2002 new year, and he had two reasons. Number one, his film For Richer or Poorer was a December flop in 1997, and then number two, his hit film Galaxy Quest, although was a hit in 1999, underperformed based on the cast's expectations. Fox denied his request because they wanted to end the year with a hit, and they felt Tim Allen had enough star power to be a hit despite his concerns, and it flopped. But again, Joe Somebody was up against Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, and Ocean's 11. So this movie was a nobody compared to that trilogy of box office competition. In December 2001, I myself was 19 years old, and I promise you, I didn't watch this movie upon release. And until February of 2025, I still had never seen it. And even now, I've only seen it once. But I enjoyed it. And lastly, on Loving on Tim Allen in this section, if IMDB is correct, then Tim Allen made $12 million for playing the lead in Joe Somebody, and that's something. So now let's love on John Pasquin. He was the director of Joe Somebody. He also directed, again, The Santa Claus from 1994, which is episode 5 of Love on Movies. I did not love on him when I did that movie, when I did the episode Loving on that movie, and so I wanted to love on him today. John Pasquin was born on June 8th, 1945. He is a director and producer known for The Santa Claus in 1994, Miss Congeniality 2, Armed and Fabulous from 2005, and Home Improvement from 1991. He's been married to Jo Beth Williams since March 14th, 1982. That's older than me. I was born August 12th, 1982, so they've been together longer than I've been alive. They have 2 children together. Pasquin began directing Broadway theater plays in early 1980s. He moved on to television, directing episodes of the series Family Ties, Growing Pains, Alice, and Newhart. In addition to directing season one, a season one episode of Roseanne. In addition to directing a season one episode of Roseanne, he directed the entire second season as well as the first 4 episodes from the revived 10th season. His producing debut came in 1991 with the hit sitcom Home Improvement starring Tim Allen, also directing a number of episodes of the series. According to IMDB, this is the numbers for his television with Tim Allen. He directed 39 episodes of Home Improvement, 73 episodes of Last Man Standing, and so far, as of when I looked, he is credited with directing 6 of the 10 episodes of Tim Allen's current sitcom, Shifting Gears. I've watched the first probably 4 or 5 of them. I like the show. It's got Tim Allen and Kat Dennings in it. He also directed Tim Allen in the films The Santa Claus from 1994, which also was his feature film directing debut. Then Jungle to Jungle in 1997 and Joe Somebody in 2001. In addition to the Tim Allen collaborations in 2005, he directed Miss Congeniality 2, Armed and Fabulous, which is the sequel to the 2000 film Miss Congeniality, which he did not direct. He's primarily a television director, and as his career has grown, he's also produced quite a bit in the last 30 plus years. Looking at his awards section on IMDb, John Pasquin has been nominated for Directors Guild of America Award in 1990 for an episode of LA Law. Also for LA Law, the previous year in 1989, he was nominated for a Primetime Emmy. Then for Home Improvement, he was nominated for the Primetime Emmy in back-to-back years of 1992 and 1993. That's a pretty good award resume. John Pasquin has been married to Jo Beth Williams since March 14th, 1982, and they have 2 sons named Will and Nick. He also has a daughter, Sarah, from a previous marriage. So that's a little bit of love for the director of Joe Somebody. I know I repeated myself a couple of times in there, but yeah, we really love John Pasquin. So Julie Bowen plays Meg Harper, which is Joe's love interest. I've been a fan of Julie Bowen since Happy Gilmore, which came out in 1996, back when I was a teenager. So you could say that she was probably in my happy place from time to time growing up. She was also a series regular in Boston Legal, my favorite show, for 52 episodes where she played Denise Bowers. She's possibly most famous for playing Claire Dunphy on arguably the greatest sitcom ever written, Modern Family. So I'm excited to love on Julie Bowen a little bit. I don't know that Modern Family is number 1 on the greatest sitcom of all time, but you can make a case for it because it is hilarious. A couple of fun facts about her is she has a pacemaker and she's fluent in Italian. Julie says that while filming her fake labor scene on Boston Legal, she went into actual labor with her son, Oliver. Oliver was born on April 10th, 2007. Then later on, she had twin sons named John and Gustav on May 8th, 2009. I'm not making fun of their names, but what a combination. John and Gustav. That's just a wild combination to me for twins. These 3 sons were with her ex-husband, who is a real estate investor named Scott Phillips. This is everything I wrote about Julie Bowen is interesting to me. You may like it or don't like it. These 3 sons were with her ex-husband, who is a real estate investor named Scott Phillips. Julie and Scott were married from September 2004 to September 2018. Julie's father also works in real estate. And then another fun fact on Modern Family, her character's husband, Phil Dunphy, played by Ty Burrell, was a realtor. So a lot of little real estate tie-ins there. I found that interesting. If IMDb is correct, then Julie Bowen made $190,000 per episode on Modern Family. So that's a little introductory love for Julie Bowen. I will spend much more time on her, I am sure, when I love on Happy Gilmore. That's coming soon. I just wanted to introduce her to the show as a warm-up for Happy Gilmore, but I really wanted to stretch myself for Tim Allen and marinate a little with Patrick Warburton and Greg Germann. I'll get to them in a moment. Now I will give some of the other cast members a little love, and then I'll get out of here. sitting almost at 40 minutes. Kelly Lynch plays Callie Schaffer, Joe's ex-wife. Honestly, you could have taken her out of the movie and it'd have been the same movie. The first thing, it's typo. Oh no, I can't do that. Gotta pull that back up. I can't adjust my notes and keep my camera up here. Guys, after I'm a little bit gun shy now that they've YouTube has kicked me out once before. So now I keep my camera up at all times so I can see it. I'll fix my notes later. The first thing I want to mention is that Kelly Lynch has some great quotes under the quotes section on IMDb. In particular, where she quotes on Cocktail from 1988 and Roadhouse from 1989. And then under the trivia section, it says she turned down the Sharon Stone role for Basic Instinct from 1992. Now, she has a wonderful, wonderful IMDb. I'm just going to kind of glaze over them real quick to show her a little bit of love. And I'm only going to mention the ones I'm familiar with. Gotta get down to them. So Ally McBeal is a good one. There's Joe Somebody. Charlie's Angels from 2000. She was in that. And then all the way down to the 80s, there's Roadhouse and Cocktail. She popped up on an episode of Miami Vice in 1987, the Equalizer from 1986. She played a bartender. So a little bit of love for Kelly Lynch there. Christy Conaway plays Abby Manham, and she's the one that flirts with Joe. Joe Somebody is her last credit on IMDb. In 2002, Conaway left her acting career to become a fashion designer. She started with scarves, but later on, she expanded her line to include sweaters and silk dresses. And in 2004, she added a men's collection. She's got some pretty good credits from Batman Returns, Doc Hollywood, and then some of her TV credits, Night Court and Tales from the Crypt. So I enjoyed loving on her or learning a little bit about her, and I just wanted to mention her. Now I'm going to spend a little more time on Hayden Panettiere, who plays Natalie Schaefer, Joe's daughter. I was so impressed when I was reading the work she's done. She has been killing it on whatever genre she chooses to do. If she wanted to do movies, she's fantastic. If she wants to do television, fantastic. She even did an audiobook, fantastic, from according to her award sections. And they don't, a lot of times they just don't hand those out. She's highly decorated. So let's love on her. The character Natalie, the little girl, was the grown up of this family. She was probably the best character in the movie. She played an old soul so well. The actress that played her has had a remarkable career. Well before Joe Somebody came along, she's already a well-established working actress. She had already been in A Bug's Life, which was a hit animated movie. Remember the Titans, Touched by an Angel, Guiding Light, and many other projects, including a Wendy's restaurant commercial. I'm going to have to get me a new chair. This thing is squeaking. It is annoying the tar out of me. After Joe Somebody, her career continued into the stratosphere, including 12 episodes on Ally McBeal, 73 of the 78 episodes of Heroes, and all 124 episodes of Nashville. That might be what she's most famous for. I don't know. But once I saw she was on Nashville, I was like, oh, that's who that is. Now, I've never seen Nashville, but I live in Tennessee. So anytime that name is there, then I'm pretty familiar with at least some of the actors that were in that show. Movies that could potentially show up on future episodes of Love on Movie are Remember the Titans from 2000. Also, I believe was filmed in Nashville. I was in acting school right after that movie came out. And I remember some of the people I met there were talking about that movie being, locally shot. Cleveland, Tennessee, to Nashville is only a couple hours away. So that's considered local for that. And I get a lot of auditions from Nashville. They have a lot of music videos there. The only video I've ever been in was Josh Turner's Long Black Train. That was the #1 video at the time it was released, and so I'm overly picky about what videos I'll even go after. I went after a Toby Keith video one time, didn't get it, and what was the other one? There's some other one that I didn't get to. I didn't that I went for. I didn't get, but I'm very, very picky when it comes to videos. But plus, going back to her, plus a couple of the Scream movies, she was in Scream 4 and Scream 6. Those will probably pop up at some point. I actually wasn't going to mention her awards because she had so many listed on IMDb, and it's one thing like in this movie where you just mentioned that there was one nominated. She has got her list. Please go to her IMDb if you're just a fan of actors and you just like to learn about actors. Her awards section on IMDb is extensive. But there were a couple that stood out, and I typed them on here so I wouldn't have to look them up. But there were a couple that stood out, and I just don't want to omit it from the show. And she has awards at the Yin Yang. Go check it out. But I'm amused that she won the 2007 Scream Award for breakout performance for Heroes. And then later in her career, she stars in a couple of the Scream franchise movies. That's just interesting to me. In fact, in 2011, she was nominated by Fright Meter Awards for Best Supporting Actress for Scream 4. And yet, she wasn't nominated for a Scream award for a Scream film. So I just thought that was fascinating. And I also want to mention that she was the winner of the 2022 Voice Arts Award for audiobook narration for the business or education best voiceover for when animals rescue amazing true stories about heroic and helpful creatures. So that's an interesting award because typically accomplished actors and actresses that are at the level she's at, when you do an audiobook, that is newsworthy. So think of James Earl Jones when he narrated the Bible, right? I mean, it's like people talk about that. I'm listening to an audiobook right now. I'm going to pull it up on my phone. I don't normally use my phone on the show, but it's on Libby. So I checked it out from the library. It's the Lincoln Douglas debates. I'm in debate number 3. I'm over 6 hours into this 16-hour audiobook. But David Strathairn, I think is how you say his name. I could be wrong, but he's voicing Abraham Lincoln, and then Richard Dreyfuss is playing Stephen Douglas. Now that's fun because the David Strathairn, I can't say his name, but I know him from the Bourne franchise. If you like the Bourne movies, he's in that. And so once I was like, man, that voice sounds familiar, and I didn't recognize it until I looked here on the app, and I was like, oh, that's who that is, because I know what his name looks like. I just can't say it. And but he's playing Abraham Lincoln, which is kind of weird because usually you hear Abraham Lincoln talk a certain way. And that's a horrible Abraham Lincoln. I don't practice that voice, but you tend to see slow. You tend to hear it as slow and deep and a little bit of melancholy. Melancholy. I'm a hillbilly. I can't talk. I need to sip. This freaking cheers driving me nuts. It's about to go out to the curb. But yeah, that's 2 pretty big actors that's doing some voiceover work. Here she is doing voiceover work. This is voiceover, especially audiobook narration in particular, is the kind of work I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I'm going to contrast briefly Tim Allen and Greg Germann and Patrick Warburton's IMDb and what I noticed as an actor, because it's applicable. But anyway, she's no stranger to the audio booth, though. She was born in 1989, in the year 2000. So depending on the month, she was 10 or 11 years old. She was nominated for a Grammy for Best Spoken Word Album for Children for its A Bug's Life read-along. What a career. I mean, again, just if you just enjoy that kind of stuff, Go check out her IMDb. Some of her other awards and nominations are for voiceover. So go check that out and just be impressed. Sometimes you just look at somebody and say, man, that is so awesome. And I'm so happy for you. Most of her accolades appear to be for dramatic work or voiceover. In fact, she's the only person involved with Joe Somebody, the film we're loving on, that was nominated for anything for this film. And again, she was nominated for the 2002 nominee for the Young Artist Award for Best Performance in a Feature Film in the Leading Young Actress category for Joe Somebody. So what a career. I'm sure she'll pop up again on the show. Jesse the Body Ventura plays himself. At the time, he was the governor of Minnesota, and he served as the governor of Minnesota during the time frame of this film. Joe Somebody was released in 2001. Ventura served as governor from 1993 to 2003, and he did not run for a second term. I know him best as a professional wrestler from the WWF/WWE, mostly as a commentator. His wrestling days were mostly over by the time I started watching wrestling as a child. I know him as Jesse the Body Ventura for that reason. He's an incredibly interesting person to love on. Being a wrestler and a governor barely scratches the surface for him. He's an actor, probably best known from Predator, but he has a bunch of acting credits, bunches of acting credits. He was also a member of the United States Navy underwater demolition team during the Vietnam War. Although, according to Wikipedia, he did not see combat. Doesn't matter. To be on that team, there's a lot of training goes into that. They're not Navy SEALs, but they kind of do that similar type of training. He wasn't a major player in Joe Somebody, but I wanted to love on him real quick, and that's all I'm going to talk about him. Here's Robert Joy. He plays Pat Chilcutt. Robert Joy was born August 17th, 1951. He's a Canadian actor. He's best known for his role as medical examiner Sid Hammerback on the police procedural series CSI New York, and his appearances in the films Atlantic City from 1980, Ragtime in 81, Desperately Seeking Susan in 85, Land of the Dead, which is where I know him from 2005, and The Hills Have Eyes from 2006. He is a two-time Genie Award nominee for Best Supporting Actor for Atlantic City and Whole New Thing. Joy has also worked extensively on the stage, particularly in Shakespearean production in both Canada and the United States. And then Jim Belushi, real quick, and then I'm going to go back to Greg Germann and Patrick Warburton because I'm loving them at the same time. Jim Belushi plays Chuck Scarlett. When I was trying to find Joe Somebody for a second viewing, I went to YouTube, and so I wouldn't have to pay for it. And so I didn't get to watch it again. But while looking for the movie, I seen that what would be considered a special feature on a DVD. It was a featurette on the scenes in the dojo. It was a fun watch, and I got on here. I will add the link to the show notes. I may or may not. You can Google. You can find it on YouTube. It's pretty easy to find because there's not a whole lot on Joe Somebody out there. Nonetheless, the most interesting part was Jim saying what got him the job, what got him cast as Chuck Scarlett, was the fact that because he was an action film, he has an action film background, and he had extensive experience doing martial arts training and on-screen combat choreography. I know his work primarily from according to Jim. I haven't seen every single episode of that show, but I've watched quite a few of them. In fact, Kimberly Williams Paisley, I did not get to talk to her, but I was an extra in Alvin and the Chipmunks Road Trip. So I got to see her up close on set. She played the sister-in-law on that show. So I think of him more as a comedic actor, and his scenes were the funniest. He looked extremely comfortable smacking around and beating up on Tim Allen throughout those scenes. I was impressed. The smoothness that he had in blocking and smacking was nice. I couldn't do that. Looking over his IMDb, I didn't realize how much voiceover work he had done. He was in the Mighty Ducks, the animated series, Gargoyles, the Blues Brothers animated series, which starred his brother, Hercules, Blues Brothers, his brother John Belushi, along with Dan Aykroyd, was the Blues Brothers I tend to think of. So it makes sense that he was in the Blues Brothers animated series. Hercules, Scooby-Doo, Doc McStuffins, and many, many more. He's also in several Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, including Jingle All the Way. You'll see that on this show. Last Action Hero and Red Heat. You'll see that on this show only because I own it. You will 100% for sure see Arnold films once I get around to them on Love on Movies, so stay tuned for that. I own a bunch of them, and one lesson I learned making this episode is it's best if you own the movie, especially if it's one I'm not familiar with. And that won't completely deter me in the future from being a little risky. For example, I want to love on the Monsterverse, which was the King Kong and Godzilla movies that are currently airing on HBO Max. And so I'll tackle those eventually. But nonetheless, the bulk of the episodes will be around many movies that I own. But I do own many movies. In fact, yesterday, Married with Children was on sale on Fandango at Home. You get the whole series for $20. Bought that, and also Criminal Minds. I'm not a big fan of Criminal Minds, but my wife is, and they were $20. 15 seasons of Criminal Minds for $20, and 11 seasons of Married with Children for $20. And so, yeah, I spent a little bit of money on TV shows yesterday. We got a lot of movies too. Jim Belushi's still out here grinding. As of this episode, he has 155 projects on IMDb as an actor, plus 6 more coming. Of course, I have to at least mention, I briefly did a minute ago, that he is the late brother of he is the brother of the late John Belushi. And I mentioned Jim was in the Blues Brothers animated series. If you're like me and don't presently know anything about the Blues Brothers, the only thing I really know is the film came out in the 1990s, starred John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. I also know John Belushi was supposed to be an original Ghostbuster, and they had to redo it after he died. Dan Aykroyd had to think of somebody else. John and Jim are both Saturday Night Live alums. I'm sure there'll be plenty of future episodes where I love on Jim Belushi. And so real quick, I want to love on Greg Germann and Patrick Warburton. And I grouped them together, and you can throw Tim Allen in here as well, because I love all 3 of their IMDb's. If you look at Tim Allen's IMDb through the eyes of an actor, you know that he is a leading man, because leading men or even if you're a woman, you're a leading actress, you're not showing up for one episode of a television show. You're showing up for 194 episodes of Last Man Standing, right? You're showing up for where's Home Improvement? 203 episodes of Home Improvement. So you're doing the same television series over and over and over and over and over, because you're the lead character. You're the lead of that. And even in the films, for the most part, he's the leading man. Not 100% of the time, but more often than not, when you're carrying the film, you're going to spend more time on that project than someone that's just showing up for a week or two. So you look at his credits, he's only got 55 different named credits on here. Now, again, you start breaking that down, 10 episodes currently of Shifting Gears, 12 of the Santa Clauses, 194 of Last Man Standing. So there's a bunch of them that where he's multiple episodes. But then you contrast that, again, Tim Allen's a leading man. Contrast that to Patrick Warburton. Patrick Warburton has got, as of right now, 190 different projects on his IMDb with four upcoming, right? So he's got 190, and him and Greg Germann are about the same age, and Greg Germann has 121 with one upcoming. Does that mean that Patrick Warburton's a better actor than Greg Germann? No. What that tells me is that Greg Germann does more theater, which theater doesn't pop up on IMDb. And when you go look at Patrick Warburton, you see pretty quickly that he's been in 318 episodes of Family Guy. He's Joe Swanson on Family Guy. So he does voiceover. So it was interesting loving on these three, and I'll love specifically on Patrick Warburton and Greg Germann in a second, but contrasting their IMDb's as an actor is interesting because Tim Allen's a leading man. So he's got fewer credits, but he's also more of a household name. That's interesting to me. Whereas Greg Germann and Patrick Warburton are both character actors, but what they do off camera is Patrick Warburton does voiceover. He's still a character actor. Greg Germann does theater. So for Tim Allen, also is a comedian. So you'll have for him on camera work, comedy, on camera work, comedy, on camera work, comedy. You go to Greg Germann, on camera work, theater, on camera work, theater, on camera work, theater. Patrick Warburton, on camera work, voiceover, on camera work, voiceover. And then that's how you go back and forth. And so I just found once I started really looking at them and gathering my notes together, I just thought it was so interesting how those three different actors, how their careers contrast. And that's the kind of stuff I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be, as a leading man, I'm supposed to create it, right? Nobody's going to cast me 5'11". I'm a hillbilly, 42 pounds, my hairline receding, all that kind of stuff. Nobody's going to put me as the lead in their stuff unless I create it, right? With Greg Germann does theater. I'm supposed to be doing theater. If I'm not on camera somewhere, I'm supposed to be doing theater. Patrick Warburton does voiceover. Audiobooks, like I mentioned with Hayden Panettiere. I've got to learn how to say that. But that's the kind of stuff I'm supposed to be doing. I decided to start a podcast exclusively on YouTube. But it's just interesting seeing the different actors and what they've chosen to do. So let me love on Patrick Warburton real quick. He plays Mark McKinney. He's best known as David Puddy from Seinfeld. He was in Seinfeld for 10 episodes, Family Guy 315 episodes and counting as Joe Swanson, Unfrosted, and also a B movie. Both of those were Jerry Seinfeld projects. Patrick Warburton is the other best known Buzz Lightyear. So Tim Allen is known as Buzz Lightyear to a greater degree, but then Patrick Warburton's the other one. So that's really cool that they're in this project together. The Emperor's New Groove, there's a bunch of spinoffs. He plays Kronk. The Tick, which is his IMDb profile pick, is that's really, really cool. Men in Black 2, there's some other little Men in Black projects he's part of. Ted 1 and 2 with Mark Wahlberg. Bunch of Scooby-Doo projects, Call of Duty and other video games. On some Baby Shark projects, he plays Grandpa Shark. On Teen Titans Go, he's Aquaman. He was in 4 episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., a couple of episodes of The Orville. Looks like he was the lead on a series called A Series of Unfortunate Events. I've never seen it, but his character is Lemony Snicket. I'm not too familiar with that character, but I feel like that's a lead character. He also popped up on News Radio, Ellen, Grace Under Fire, Designing Women, Mad About You, Murphy Brown, and Quantum Leap. Let me just read a little bit about him. Patrick Warburton, born November 14th, 1964, is an American actor. His live-action TV roles include David Puddy on Seinfeld, the title character on The Tick, Jeb Denton on Less Than Perfect, Jeff Bingham on Rules of Engagement, and Lemony Snicket on A Series of Unfortunate Events. Warburton has also voiced Joe Swanson in Family Guy, Sheriff Bronson Stone in Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, Kronk in Disney's The Emperor's New Groove, Buzz Lightyear in Buzz Lightyear Star Command, and Brock Sampson in The Venture Brothers. In the audiobook, The Eye of the Bedlam Bride by Matt Dinneman, he voices the father of the main character, Carl, in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. Within advertising, he plays a control enthusiast in commercials for National Car Rental. Now let's get Greg Germann and love on him real quick. And then that's all I've got. Love on Greg Germann here. Gregory Andrew Germann. Now, I thought it was German for a long time, but on Wikipedia here, it's got GUR dash M upside down EN. So it looks like Greg Germann to me. Born February 26, 1958, is an American actor who is known for playing Richard Fish on the television series Ally McBeal, which earned him a Screen Actors Guild Award. He's also known for his roles as Eric Rico Morrow on the sitcom Ned and Stacy, Tom Korakick, whatever, and Grey's Anatomy, and as Hades in season 5 of Once Upon a Time. I'm in the last season of Once Upon a Time, not as an actor, but watching it. I'm in the last season, and I've got to finish that. I got to get that knocked out. So Greg Germann, he plays Jeremy in Joe Somebody. Here's just some of the credits. That was Wikipedia. This is just some of the credits I got off IMDb that I enjoy. Talladega Nights as Larry Dennett Jr. Again, he's the reason that I was like 100% Joe Somebody was going to be on Love on Movies, because once I do Talladega Nights, I'm not going to have a lot of time to spend on him. Ally McBeal for 112 episodes. Clear and Present Danger, which is part of the Jack Ryan series. I'll do those at some point because I own them. Not the TV series, the movies. There's like 5 movies or something. Child's Play 2. Will Trent, he was in 4 episodes. I got booked as an extra on that show. I had to cancel the booking because something came up, but that's all I know about Will Trent. Grey's Anatomy for 64 episodes. The Good Fight. I've saw the other one. That The Good Fight's a spinoff. Off the top of my head, I can't think of what the Good Wife. The Good Wife. I've seen that whole series. I've not seen The Good Fight yet. Law and Order SVU, 4 episodes. Once Upon a Time, he was 10 episodes as Hades. Get Hard was a Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart film that he was in. He popped up in Blue Bloods. He's in a few episodes of NCIS. Then he popped up on CSI. He was in a movie called Quarantine, which I liked, was a good movie. I want to watch it again. I've not seen it since COVID. I saw it years ago, but it's a Jennifer Carpenter film, and I'm a fan of her from Dexter. She's also in a show my wife really likes called 1833, whatever. The one that's got Helen Mirren and who's the other one? Harrison Ford. Whichever one that is, 1883 maybe. Wherever that show is, Jennifer Carpenter's in it. She's fantastic. Desperate Housewives, he popped up. Down to Earth was a Chris Rock film that came out when I was a teenager. It was a good movie. Sweet November, Keanu Reeves film. 3 episodes of Ellen, then he popped up on Miami Vice. So Greg Germann, somebody that I wanted to love on because he's in Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. I wanted to love on Julie Bowen because she was in Happy Gilmore, and I'm going to love on that movie before July. I don't know exactly when. This would be a good time to do that movie because spring just started and everybody's kind of in a golf mood, but I got some other movies that I'm working on. I'll announce them later. That'll be episodes 8 and 9 and 10 and 11. So I got 4 movies lined up that I want to do. I'll announce them later. Let me pull this up. So I enjoyed this movie. I hope you get a chance to watch it again. I know that this episode is not one. This movie is not a movie that's going to draw a whole lot of eyeballs to it, to my channel. But nonetheless, I enjoyed this movie. I'm going to rate it spilled popcorn, but barely. I'm going to rate it much higher than them. They're at 28%. For fun, I'm going to give it 56%. That's still spilled popcorn, but it's stale, but I'll eat it. So you have a good day, everyone, and we will see you next time on Love on Movies. I guess I better plug my socials again. Follow me on Facebook at Van City McDowell, and it's the same handle on Instagram. I stole that from Ryan Reynolds and Joshua Jackson. You can follow Ryan Reynolds if you want to at Van City Reynolds, and then Joshua Jackson is at Van City Jax, Jax on Instagram. And that's how I came up with that handle. And then I picked Facebook. I used the same handle as I did on Instagram just so they would match. So that's where that came from. Van City McDowell. And thank you for Love on Movies.